Senator Mutai Kagwe, Cabinet Secretary of Agriculture and Livestock of the Republic of Kenya, and the host of this event. Honorable ministers from so many countries that are here, welcome, honorable ministers. Soyez la bienvenue pour les gens qui viennent de pays francophones. On est très content de vous voir ici. Je vois aussi M. Ibrahim Koulibaly, le président de l'association panafricaine pour les paysans en Afrique. Merci pour tout ce que vous faites. J'ai vécu dans votre pays, beau pays Mali, et donc je peux vous saluer à Nisokoma, Trocité, en bas. Senior management and staff of the African Development Bank, in particular my vice president, my very dynamic and able vice president, Vice President Beth Danforth. Please clap for her. She and Martin Fregene, that you all know, they do such incredible work, and all their colleagues and staff of the bank. And Vice President Nena Wabufo, also the Vice President for Regional Integration and Business Delivery of the bank, is here. And thank you very much for also partnering with them. Distinguished delegates, their development partners that are here, the farmers of Africa, the agribusinesses that are here, my darling wife, Grace, that is here. You know, see, everybody talks about Akin Adeshina, but I can tell you, without Grace, I'll not be where I am today. So thank you, honey, for always being here. And I remember, Martin, you owe quite some thanks, because she said to me, look, I'm going to come to this particular event because I want to encourage Martin and his colleagues for all of what you're doing. And so you got two for the price of one. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am delighted to join you all today at this high-level conference focusing on smallholder farmers. As somebody who grew up on the farm, in a household, my father grew up as a farmer, and somebody who went to a village school where everything was all about farming. I recognize and I know that until we actually transform the lives of farmers, there's just no way in which we can transform the rural economies of Africa. Whether it is sending kids to school, whether it's in terms of health, whether it's in terms of finance, whether it's in terms of supporting them to have the right infrastructure, it doesn't really matter what it is. If you're going to change rural economies of Africa, you have to change the lives of farmers. If you believe that, say, yes, I believe. I'm not collecting any offerings, so don't worry about it. On behalf of the African Development Bank Group, I wish to convey our profound gratitude to our host, His Excellency President William Ruto, his government and the people of Kenya for their generous support, for their hospitality, for hosting us for this high-level conference in Nairobi. I actually will have joined you for the sessions since yesterday, since you started, but I had a very important engagement at the State House of Kenya. It was such a great honor yesterday for His Excellency President William Ruto to confer on me the Chief of the Order of the Golden Heart, CGH. Kenya's highest national honor and distinction. I wish to express my deepest gratitude again to my dearest brother and friend, President Ruto, for his exceptional honor that he has done me. And this honor is actually quite special. It's been given to only 19 heads of state and global leaders since the independence of Kenya in 1963. I'm especially delighted that a conferment of this honor occurred at the time that we were having this conference on farmers and agribusinesses, because you are my family. And you gather right here for this high-level conference on scaling financing for smallholder farmers. And as you know, I'm a great supporter of African farmers. I'm a great supporter of agriculture. I don't think economies will have inclusive growth until you have increased productivity in agriculture, until you have rural infrastructure, until you get institutions working for smallholder farmers. Look, the rice that you eat is actually done by smallholder farmers from around the world. There is absolutely no difference between the smallholders of farmers of Africa, and those around the rest of the world. In fact, there is no difference between smallholders from Africa and other commercial farms, large ones, in other parts of the developed world. The only difference is the smallholder farmers in Africa have a series of bounded constraints around them. Constraints in terms of information, constraints in terms of technology, constraints in terms of access to market, constraints in terms of not having facilities to de-risk them to face multiple shocks that they have, constraints that they have, in being able now to get access to markets because there are no logistics and infrastructure around them. So fundamentally, I believe the only thing we have to do for smallholder farmers in Africa is to remove the bounded constraints around them and to create the right institutional environment around them. I'm very confident that the smallholder farmers of Africa, not only are they feeding us today, they will feed us tomorrow, and they will even feed the world. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, because you are my family, I would like you to please join me in putting your hands together and thanking His Excellency President Ruto for the great honor that he has done me. And a lot of it comes from my work with you and in agriculture. Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to commend our partners, the Pan-African Farmers Organization, PAFO, and all the partner institutions that have worked tirelessly with our teams from the African Development Bank to organize this high-level conference. And to also give special thanks to you, Mr. Coulibaly, the president of the Pan-African Farmers Organization, for being a co-sponsor and partner with us. We meet here in Nairobi today to reposition and to expand opportunities for Africa's smallholder farmers who contribute over 80% of the continent's food production. I'll just be going over with you today on progress since Dakar 2 Feed Africa Summit, a portrait of success in building coalitions for supporting smallholder farmers to transform African economies. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, Africa, without any doubt, will be at the epicenter of feeding the world. Since 65% of the uncultivated arable land left to feed the world is not in Asia, it's not in Latin America, it's not in Europe, it's right here in Africa. Therefore, what Africa does with its agriculture will determine the future of food in the world. It is with this goal in mind that unleashing the potential of Africa in its agricultural sector to feed itself, and to do so with pride. And let me just say something here. I don't believe nations can develop without pride. And so you've got to actually, as a nation, know that your neighbor may love you to death, but it is not the job of your neighbor to send your kids to school, neither it is the job of your neighbor to actually feed you. I believe that no nation can claim to be an independent nation unless it has the pride and the discipline to actually feed its own people. And therefore, this was what was at the basis of what we did in Dakar 2. And I was delighted that we, at the African Development Bank, were able to work together with the government of Senegal, President Macky Sall, incredible leadership, the African Union. We organized the Feed Africa Summit in Dakar in 2023. The theme of that summit was on achieving food sovereignty and resilience. Attended by over 34 heads of state and government, Dakar 2 showed the political commitment of governments towards ensuring food security and food sovereignty. I'll repeat that, food sovereignty in Africa. Many of you were there, and if you were there, let me just see your hands up. I know many of you were there. It's good we were all together. Thank you for being there. At the heart of Dakar 2 were 41 presidential boardrooms that launched country food and agriculture delivery compacts, outlining national production targets, enabling policies, smallholder farmer support, rural infrastructure development, and all kinds of innovative financing solutions for farmers and agribusinesses. Dakar 2 gave us a renewed sense of purpose and marked a turning point in Africa's pursuit of food security to the power of partnerships and cooperation. Dakar 2 showed us the power of partnerships. You know, many of you will know that in January of this year, myself and President Ajay Banga of the World Bank got together to launch what is called the Mission 300. That Mission 300 is to connect 300 million Africans to electricity by 2030. And the reason why this is very important for us in agriculture is that whether you're a seed company, whether you're a fertilizer company, whether you are doing food processing, whether you are actually doing irrigation, whether you're doing storage, it doesn't matter what it is that you're doing. Without electricity, you can't do anything. And so we were able to do that through the power of partnerships. And that partnership allowed us to raise, at that meeting, over $50 billion to work on providing electricity all across Africa. And that thing that we did came from agriculture. It came from Dakar 2 Summit that we had in Senegal. And in Senegal, we were able to mobilize $72 billion towards implementing the Food and Agricultural Delivery Compacts all across African countries. Dear friends, this is unprecedented in Africa's history of agriculture. Since then, the African Development Bank has made tremendous progress in our combined continental quest to feed Africa, approving 77 operations valued at roughly $4 billion to support the implementation of the compacts in 32 African countries. This year, I'm pleased to let you know that the African Development Bank plans to approve an additional roughly $1.7 billion in project investments and policy-based operations. Thank you. Central to the compacts, and here maybe I will open a small parenthesis again. Alice Albright, you were the CEO of the Millennium Challenge Corporation. And when I actually came up with the idea that we should have food and agricultural delivery compacts, I actually borrowed it from the exceptional work of the Millennium Challenge Corporation. Because the Millennium Challenge Corporation had this thing they call compacts for all the countries. And I liked it so much because it has a whole menu of policies and institutions, macroeconomic policies, everything that countries had to do. So I really liked it so much. So we were able to take it. But I wanted Alice to, although I actually did it for you there, Alice was an incredible leader for the Millennium Challenge Corporation and a great partner with the African Development Bank. And I want to thank you personally for the passion you had, the drive you had, the commitment you had. You are always there looking for how to make infrastructure connect with us in Africa. Please join me. You may rise, please. Thank this incredible woman for all her contributions to us in Africa. Thank you. And I see David, who used to be on my board. Nice to see you, David, here. Central to the compacts is the bank's flagship initiative called the Technologies for African Agricultural Transformation, or TAAT, which aims to double food production by providing proven technologies for more than 40 million smallholder farmers by 2025. The TAAT platform has already delivered heat-tolerant wheat varieties, drought-tolerant maize varieties, high-yielding rice varieties, as well as capacity building and training and other related services for over 25 million farmers across the continent. Our efforts with partners have already helped us to increase Africa's crop production by, guess what, an estimated 120 million tons of additional food. I thought you'd clap for that. And I just want to appreciate my staff. I get to do this talk, I get to motivate them, I get to be there with them, but they do the work. And I have incredible staff working for me at the bank. And I like Martin and all the guys who are working on TAAT and all the CGIAR centers that have worked with us to create the ecosystem to deliver high-yielding technologies all across Africa to that platform. So please rise and be recognized. Guys, now thank you, please. And I'll say, as somebody who spent 10 years of my career, please sit down, in the consultative group on international agricultural research. This is groundbreaking stuff because we were able to bring the power of the CGIAR to hold the CGI accountable to get technologies away from the shelves that they have and get them into the hands of farmers. And I'll tell you a little bit about how it was developed. When we actually had Dakar 1, I was in Dakar and I called all the director generals of the CGIAR centers there. And the reason was because when I was elected president of the bank in September, I resumed in September of 2015, I went to New York. And in New York, I met with Jim Kim, who was the then president of the World Bank. And as we were talking, and I remember it so well, on September 26th exactly, in New York, I told Jim Kim, I am launching a program at the African Development Bank called Feed Africa, for Africa to feed itself. And Jim told me, well, actually, we've been working on looking for how we might reduce support for the international agricultural research centers. So I'm kind of quite interested in that you want to launch this $25 billion program. So, Mr. President, if you pull the plug on the CGIAR, I will scream so loud you won't like it. The reason being that there's no part of the world that has fed itself without technologies emanating from the CGIAR, including the developed countries themselves. And so Jim looked at me and said, okay, Akin, you lead, and we will follow. And I knew that I had my job cut out for me. I had to get the CGI to wake up, because I worked in many centers there for 10 years of my career. And so we went to Dakar 1, and I called all the DGs of the International Agricultural Research Centers, and I asked them, give me the plan for how we are going to feed Africa. And the guy who was leading them said, I'll give it to you, but we'll give it to you in 6 months. And I looked at him and I said, if I don't get it by 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, I will call President Jim Kim of the World Bank and ask him to shut the entire CGIAR down. Of course, that was a great incentive. They worked all night. Nobody slept until 6 a.m. in the morning. Before 6 a.m., clap for them. Yeah, it was great. And that is how we came up with what is called today Technologies for African Agricultural Transformation, as a platform that will hold everybody accountable, not for research, because look, I'm a researcher, I'm a scholar. We don't eat research papers, we eat food. And so if it's good enough, take it to the farmers, as Dr. Norman Borlaug always told us. And at almost 6 a.m., they sent me a note, Mr. President, give us until 4 o'clock. And of course, I was generous enough to give them the 4 o'clock. And that is how the TART that you have today has been developed. And it's been doing incredible, incredible work. Now, David, you were then with Howard Buffett. David, you may rise, and it's a family we are in. David used to be on my board at the bank, and is now working for the World Food Program. He used to work there before. And I remember calling Howard Buffett, who you were working for at the time. I say, we have, through the work of the CGIAR, CIMMET, water-efficient maize for Africa, that can do well under any condition of drought. And Howard Buffett then said, look, if it's that good, bring it to us in South Africa. There is Limpopo province, which is between South Africa and Zimbabwe. Very hot, very dry. So we shipped all the jamplers in there. He said, if it works here, it will work anywhere. And guess what? It worked there. And when there was drought in 2019 in East and Southern Africa, I told everybody at the African Development Bank, go and get those water-efficient maize varieties. And they were deployed, guess what? For 5.8 million households. And that's how they were able to escape the drought. That's the power of science. That's the power of technology. That's the power of working together. A total of $1.7 billion in investments have also been influenced by TART's climate-smart technologies. And about 247 million Africans now have better nutrition because of this incredible TART platform. TART is also a key driver of the African Development Bank's $1.5 billion Africa Emergency Food Production Facility, which we developed in 2022 as an aftermath of dealing with the aftermath of the war between Russia and Ukraine that was going to actually lead to food insecurity in Africa, especially for wheat and for maize. The facility is a continental initiative to support 20 million smallholder farmers in 35 countries to accelerate access to certified seeds and fertilizers and to produce 38 million metric tons of food. As of December last year, we got to work really pretty quickly. The African Emergency Food Production Facility had delivered 429,000 tons of seed, distributed 2.8 million tons of fertilizers to over 12.3 million farmers. It has supported the production of roughly 38 million metric tons of additional food in Africa, and we are well on our target to continue to excel with this particular work. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are working hard to connect farmers to market off-takers and to accelerate the processing and value addition to food and agricultural commodities. We are doing this through the development and the rollout of what's called special agro-industrial processing zones. The African Development Bank has committed $934.5 million for the development and rollout of special agro-industrial processing zones. And we've been able, again, partnership, to have partners that have provided $938 million for us in co-financing. Currently, we have 27 ongoing special agro-industrial processing zone projects across 11 countries in Africa. However, despite the lots of progress that we have made, one area that continues to remain a challenge, a thorn in our flesh, if I may say, especially for smallholder farmers and small and medium-sized agribusinesses, is lack of access to finance. There exists an annual financing deficit of $75 billion for farmers and small and medium-sized enterprises in agriculture. Data shows that from lenders, a survey was done of 35 lenders, and they say perception of risk is very high, and the low returns by banks for lending to agriculture. But let me tell you one thing. I know agriculture. Question is whether the banks know agriculture. When I was Minister of Agriculture in Nigeria, and my minister from Nigeria, it's good to see you here, I remember at the time I called all the banks in Nigeria together. And I asked them the question, why is it that you are not lending to the agricultural sector? Same thing, risk. Forget risk. You walk out of it in your car, it's a risk. You eat food, it's a risk. You get on a plane, it's a risk. So don't bother me about risk. It's a risk-return world. All I have to do is to find a way of reducing those risks. And we set up a facility called NISAL. And I would say it here, Honorable Minister, the NISAL that I developed was an exceptional program, together with Sanusi Lamido, the central bank governor of Nigeria at the time. We had 22 chief risk officers of banks in a hall like this. And I remember asking them, tell me, what is the probability of loss if you are actually lending to the agricultural sector? I was told it could range anything from 98% to 100%. Of course, I asked them, if it is so, why have you still been keeping your jobs? Because you've been lending. They should have fired you a long time ago. And so we decided we had to do two things. De-risk the agricultural sector. A value chain, de-risk it. So you're lending not willy-nilly, but in value chain financing. If you're lending to somebody producing tomato, you better be lending to somebody who's going to be processing that tomato. So you have reducing the embedded costs and risk within those agricultural value chains. And then you have to de-risk the financial value chains. And you put those things on top of each other. They are very symmetrical. A de-risk agricultural value chain and a de-risk and well-coordinated agricultural value chain. It works. And I want to tell you that we deployed that facility in Nigeria. We were able to leverage commercial banks more than 10 times. So you're talking about $1.5 billion of financing that went into it. And this is the good part. Non-performing loans. The non-performing loans over that period was less than 1%. And it helped to expand the share of agricultural lending in the bank's portfolio in the country, aggregate, from 0.7% to 5%. And that is how agriculture worked. Of course, when I left, that program was bastardized. And as I'm speaking to you today, it's working from the bank in Ghana, working in Togo, it's working in Gambia, it's working in Tanzania, it's working in Kenya because I started that work here. Honorable Minister, sorry that I have to put you on the spot, but they say you sit on a hot seat. Please, I beg you. You cannot succeed unless you revive the NISAL program to what it was, not the political one they've turned it into. Because it will allow you to get the banks to lend again to the agricultural sector. I want your success. But institutions, we cannot afford to have policy reversals. I wish you well, but please get the original NISAL back. I want President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to succeed. And I told them this, Mr. President. Your policies, your goal to succeed won't work until you bring commercial banks, to risk them to lend to the agriculture sector from end to end. Can I get some amen in supporting me to? Thank you very, very much, Honorable Minister. Therefore, we must find efficient ways to continue to de-risk lending to farmers and smallholder and small and medium-sized enterprises. This can be achieved by absorbing those incremental risks, thereby increasing the lender's risk appetite, and by leveraging the private sector finance to the agricultural sector. The three major investment channels that the African Development Bank uses for this to address this challenge are as follows. One, affirmative finance action for women in Africa, called AFAWA. And Jules is here. Please stand up. Jules, who runs the Africa Guarantee Fund, and their team doing exceptional work. Two, the African Fertilizer Financing Mechanism. Where is my staff who runs the program? She's here, supposed to be here anyway. And third is the Input Suppliers Risk Sharing Program. On the affirmative finance action for women in Africa, we have already approved $2.52 billion for financing 24,000 businesses of women in Africa. Look, if you're talking finance and you're talking lending to women, let me tell you something. Women are the most bankable segment of the population that you can have. That is not a cliche. That is a fact. Because 98% of the credit they take, they pay back. And I always say, I'm sure the remaining 2% is probably guys like ourselves that tell them as they are going, well, you don't have to pay everything, you know. We need to use money for other things, but I believe that when women win, Africa will win. When women win in agriculture, everything will change. And so I want to say I'm so proud of the AFAWA program. It is now currently working with the Africa Guarantee Fund, 185 financial institutions in 44 countries. Second, the Africa Fertilizer Financing Mechanism has implemented trade credit guarantee projects in 9 countries, including Tanzania, Nigeria, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Zimbabwe, Kenya, Uganda, and Mozambique. The $17.1 million trade credit guarantee has leveraged 4.7 times. And in the case of Uganda, even up to 13 times. It has enabled the distribution of farm inputs worth $63 million to almost 800,000 smallholder farmers. These things do work. Again, let me just open a small parenthesis and give honor to whom honor is due. I thought President Obasanjo was going to be here. Is he coming? No. But you should hear what I will have to say. When I was in Rockefeller Foundation in 2006, and I decided we should have an Africa Fertilizer Summit, I went to Nigeria. He was then the chair of the African Union. And he helped me to organize this. And I remember asking him at the time, he was asking me, what is the solution? As a first, we have to build agro-dealer networks. Second, we have to make sure that those agro-dealers have access to finance. Third, we have to make sure that we have local manufacturing of fertilizers in Africa. Fourth, we have to make sure that we can have collective action in importing large volumes of fertilizers from the small quantities that countries are doing, so you can have bulk purchase and reduce the cost of shipment of fertilizers to Africa. And fifth, you need to have something called the Africa Fertilizer Financing Mechanism. So the Africa Fertilizer Financing Mechanism that you see today, I actually developed it in 2006, and I was not at the African Development Bank. And I remember the day of the summit, President Obasanjo sat there and was looking through the list of speakers. My predecessor, President Donald Kaberuka, had prepared, of course, to give his speech. And President Obasanjo skipped him. And I went to him, Mr. President, you skipped the president of the African Development Bank. He said, please go and sit down. I didn't skip him. Of course, okay, Papa, fine. I went again, you have skipped him. He said, no, I haven't skipped him. And then, of course, at the African Development Bank, for you to open a trust fund, you need to have minimum $10 million. President Obasanjo then took the floor. He said, well, the Nigerian government has decided to put down $10 million to support the opening of the Africa Fertilizer Financing Mechanism at the African Development Bank. And now, Mr. President of the bank, you can have the floor. And my predecessor, President Kaberuka, nicely took his speech, put it right back in the breast pocket. He said, Mr. President, we agree. And that is how we have the Africa Fertilizer Financing Facility at the bank. And of course, the third channel is the new $600 million input supplier risk sharing facility. This will support the development of more robust agricultural input market systems through de-risking of the input supply ecosystem. This is focusing on Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Ghana, and Zambia. And we are doing this work with leveraging the bank's own balance sheet to partial risk credit guarantees. Your Excellencies, earlier this morning, I had the pleasure of actually chairing the steering committee for what is called Mobilizing Access to Digital Economy, or MAE, Alliance in Africa. And it is a partnership we have together with MasterCard and several other partners. In this first phase of it, the bank will contribute $300 million in the first 5 years of the programming. And our focus eventually is to be able to reach 100 million farmers in Africa with digital financial services, access to information, access to climate risk, insurance facilities, and also to logistics and so on. I know MasterCard is here. Where is the Senior Vice President of MasterCard if he's here? Thank you very much for your partnership. As I close, I would like to inform you that the African Development Bank's commitment on how we can continue to mobilize financing for farmers has gotten us to this particular point. We will be going to our board of directors to establish a $500 million facility to unlock $10 billion of financing for smallholder farmers in Africa. And that will include small and medium-sized agribusinesses. This is incredible for us at the bank, but we didn't get here just like that. It's got here through all of what I've said. It will include the use of trade guarantees, credit guarantees, first loss coverage, blended finance, origination incentives that defray the high transaction costs of serving enterprises as well as technical assistance. Your Excellencies, my dear colleagues and friends in agriculture, ladies and gentlemen, from Dakar to Feed Africa to Nairobi, Scaling Up Finance for Farmers Conference today, we stand on the threshold of making history by pushing the boundaries of innovation and building extensive collaborative alliances to accelerate action towards bridging the financing gap facing smallholder farmers and small and medium-sized agribusinesses. The African Development Bank remains fully committed to collaborating with the Pan-African Farmers Organization and all of your subsidiary farmers organizations, all the development partners and financial institutions to fully unlock the financing for smallholder farmers and SMEs in agriculture. Together, let us expand access to finance at scale for farmers and small and medium-sized enterprises. Together, let us provide strong policy support for African farmers. Africa must not abandon its farmers. Together, let us unleash the potential of agriculture in Africa. Let us make agriculture in Africa to be the breadbasket of the world for the continent. And together, let us feed Africa, but do so with pride. I said earlier this morning, every big opportunity requires collective action. I would like you to please stand. I am not doing any prayer time or anything like that. I just want you to stand. Look at the person next to you, please. It's not a COVID time. It's nothing like that, so everything's safe. Now, every challenge in Africa is a baobab problem. Baobab trees are very large trees. And I don't believe in doing anything alone. I don't know how to do it. But if you put your hand around a baobab tree, you cannot do it. But if you put your hand around others around a baobab tree, you certainly can put your hands around the baobab tree. The challenge we have of $75 billion of lack of financing for agriculture and small and medium-sized enterprises, it's a baobab problem. The African Development Bank, with all of our efforts, is not enough. We need everybody working together. And so please put your hands together with the person next to you. Just connect. And repeat after me, please. Say, it's a baobab problem. We are more than able to do it. Working in partnerships, we will make sure that African farmers are able to get all the financing they need. Now put your hands together and say, let's do it. Thank you very much.